Brock, it says it looks like this event was cancelled on. It's good now? Okay. Hello, folks. Welcome to the webinar. We are just getting started as more folks are joining. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Please feel free to grab a notepad or any place you can make notes, your laptop, your notepad. This is going to be an engaging session. At any point, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put those in the chat. Also, feel free to put a thumbs up, as simple as that, for anything you want to express your views on or comments on. So, looking forward to you guys joining, engaging, and connecting on this webinar. So, the topic today is managing your career amidst the uncertainty and the layoffs which are going on. As we all know, the environment we are currently in, there have been a lot of challenges that folks are facing, both within the corporate environment and in the startup world. And there are also hundreds of thousands of people who are in transition right now, or millions of people in transition, going from job A to job B, or in some cases, they have no clarity on where to go next after they've been laid off, unfortunately. And in this scenario, we definitely need some guidance, some help in order to navigate where we are in this current environment. We have a 3-point agenda that we'll be getting to in a moment. But first, This is a little bit about me. I have been a four-time Fortune 50 executive. I've worked at companies including Amazon, Microsoft, Intuit, and GoDaddy. I've had the opportunity to be an investor in some early stage companies, and I also currently am an executive coach. I am excited to connect with you all today. I would love to take this time to welcome you all to this webinar today. Happy Friday. And I know there are folks joining us from around the world. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all you folks joining us from around the world. So I would love for us to get started. Tell us where you're joining us from. Tell us what's on your mind. This will help us get started. So if you're from San Jose, if you're from San Francisco, Seattle, Austin, whatever your location is, please enter where you're joining us from to begin with and what's on your mind. In the what's on your mind, you could just say job or career or guidance or confusion, navigation, whatever it is top of mind for you. Feel free to type that into the chat window. All right, we have folks joining from India. Navigation, yes. We're getting a few more comments. Just tell us where you're joining from and what's top of mind. And if you don't have anything top of mind, that's okay too. Happy Friday. Just tell us where you're joining us from. Savita, welcome, welcome, welcome. You're joining us from Seattle. Great to see you. Lavesh, great to have you on the call. And it's okay for you guys to post these things in this group. We are all going to engage in an interactive chat. So by all means, feel free to post your comments. All right. Hi, Deepthi. Deepthi is joining us from Santa Clara. Good to see you, Deepthi. Great. So folks, keep typing and chatting. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I know there are folks from Singapore. There are folks right now joining us from Boston. So welcome all. Super excited to have you all over here. Let's get started. So we are having a three-point agenda today. One, we're going to discuss the challenges that we are facing currently in the job market. The next one is going to talk about how do we upgrade our own personal operating system, which means we take responsibility for what we can change in this environment. And lastly, I'm going to share a tool with you which will help you accelerate your job search or your ability to navigate where you are in your career right now. Let's begin with the first item, which is mixed messages in the economy. So when we think about it, where we are right now in 2023, if you look back, the last one and a half year has been a lot of turmoil in the job markets. Started with the tech, but now it's starting to show up in every industry. We are getting mixed messages about the inflation numbers, the job market. Yes, we added over 250,000 jobs in April, but that alone is not a straight up indicator. We still have confusion going on with a lot of layoffs still being announced. We have LinkedIn, which came out recently announcing job cuts. Lyft, a couple of weeks ago, Lyft announced a 30% of its workforce being cut. We also saw Microsoft recently announcing that they are not going to do bonuses or raises this time. And the challenge that we see right now is on one side, we see companies are hiring, but the layoffs haven't stopped yet. And clearly, it is a time where a lot of companies think that the only way, unfortunately, to cut costs is to let go of their people. And that is not something which is helpful for folks who are relying on those companies for their future. So at this point, what can you do in this market to step back? So I'm going to cover some of the strategies both for people who are in the job market looking for a job, and also people who are employed currently but they are facing that uncertainty as to what's going to happen next with their employer. The next thing that I would love to talk to you about is dive into the career challenges within companies. So when you think about it, you have the companies right now who are clearly telling their employees, like I gave the example of Microsoft, where there is no budget for promotions or raise, and then what that does is it's just signaling to people that you continue to work hard, but there is no guarantee of any growth or any raise, at least for the next 12 months. Obviously, all the upskilling, all the training budgets have been cut or reduced, and there is more and more expectations from employees. Employees are supposed to be returning to the office, delivering more work, and when the workforce gets cut, unfortunately the scope remains the same. So the irony is you're still, as an example, having a divisional goal of say 50% year on year growth on your product usage, or 20% revenue target, a revenue increase target. Unfortunately, those goals are not changing. So that's the funny part here, where you are cutting the workforce, you're cutting the number of people who are assigned a certain goal, but the goals remain the same. So for whoever remains in that company or in that environment, that's like being pressure tested, because you're going to be asked to do more while your colleagues are not having a job. You're going to be asked to do more while you're not being given a raise. You're going to be asked to do more when you're actually almost guaranteed that there's going to be no promo or no forward looking plan for your career. And how do you sustain that environment? How do you still do your best work is going to be important. So feel free to type your comments or questions that you may have in chat, and I would love to see how I can answer those. So at any point, if you have any questions on my slides, on the content being discussed, feel free to type those in your comments here. If you are on the market, so unfortunately, if you've been laid off or if you're coming straight out of college, you're a job seeker. And what you're finding right now is that there is way many people. There is a lot of people right now who are actually trying to go from A to B, from going from not working to working. And that only means that it's a lot of competition out there. The average time recruiters take to spend to basically scan through a resume is 5 seconds. So in 5 seconds, the resume is basically a yes or a no, and the candidate might actually get rejected or might move to the next step in the flow. So your resume needs to be great, your skills need to be really good, and you have to stay competitive. You have to remain competitive to be able to attract that attention towards your profile, towards your resume. And the time it takes from the time you apply to the time you actually have the offer has gone up. So there are folks who are actually in the process for 4 5 months before they actually see the offer letter from that company. So they may actually see a recruiter reach out, or they might actually hear back from their job application, let's say in January, but then by the time they get the offer, it's May. And I've seen that happen this year, which means that initially the companies are not even sure that for the jobs that they have out there, do they still need those people, because those very same companies are also doing layoffs. And at the same time, when they are actually going through interviews, they have a lot of candidates who they are interviewing, negotiating with, trying to see who's the best talent, and it just takes a long time. Surprisingly, even now I'm seeing that companies are conducting 10 plus rounds of interviews. And some of my mentees who've been through these interviews, it's 10 plus rounds of conversations, many of those in person, before they actually end up getting a verbal offer. And so I've seen that process long. Yes, it is a lot of effort for folks, but then there is a mindset and there is a skill set that you need to have to be able to stay put and remain focused on your goal. What basically is making it further complex for individuals to remain positive is that when you go through a lot of these interviews, there is no feedback being provided. Everyone basically will come back with either a line which says, we will get back to you, but in reality, they don't. And also you might hear things like, I'm not going to move you to the next round. And when they say that, again, it's like, what do I make of it? You're not moving me because was I not good, or you're not moving me forward because you've closed that rec, or did you hire somebody internally? In these three, only one was a problem with me, 33%. 66% it's because of your reason. But if you don't tell me feedback, what I've seen most people do is that they'll take that rejection negatively, and that hurts them. And so that's the number one shift that I want you guys to make. If you're listening to this webinar and if you experience this, just give me a thumbs up or say yes. Because what you want is, you want to make sure that you do not take these rejections negatively. Not, you don't take these personally, because the only person you can count on in this environment is you. So you have to do everything, you have to do whatever it takes for you to stay positive, to stay focused on your goal. And the more time you're looking at the rejections and the reasons behind it and overthinking the rejections, the more you're going away, the farther you are from your goal, because you're not focusing on what's out there, the opportunity. Instead, you're focusing on who rejected you. So unless the recruiters tell you what you did wrong or what specifically you could change, I ask you to not take those rejections personally. I ask you to understand that there are probably 500 resumes or applications, from which 50 people, 40 people, 30 people get a call, and perhaps 10 go through an interview, and one would get an offer. Only if the company still has kept the requisition open and not closed it because of cost cutting reasons, and only if the company has not decided to hire one of its own employees internally into that new role. So even if you are the best person getting to the top of that, if you're the top performing candidate in the interview, even then there's no guarantee you're going to get the job, because what if somebody is internally being laid off? They'll be given the first preference and not you. And what if the company now decides to close the rec? Meta did this last year, Google did this last year. There were offers out there, and those were canceled out while the people were relocating from A to B. So can you imagine somebody resigning, leaving their job, and then relocating, and then being told, sorry, you need to go back because, or sorry, we can't honor this offer because we've cut costs, or that division is no longer expanding. And that's tough in this environment. So the one thing you want to change is, make sure, unless you have specific feedback from the recruiter, don't take these rejections personally. And so Kavita has a question here. How do you pass a recruiter scan? How do you need multiple resumes for multiple positions? Um, so that's a great question. There are two questions in there. The first and foremost question I would ask you to ask yourself is, what kind of jobs are you targeting? Because let's just take an example that you want to be an engineering manager, or you're applying for an engineering manager role. Ideally, you do not want to have a different version of a resume for every job, because then you're going to spend too much time tailoring, customizing, and in the end, you'll forget which resume version was with whom. And it is a lot of chaos. It is difficult to manage that. So the best thing I would suggest you do is that you want to first read and print out 5 different jobs which you are a perfect match to. Let's say if you're looking to be an engineering manager, I would print the jobs, I would have the jobs handy for whoever is hiring. I would take Google or Apple or Microsoft, and I would also take some of the mid to small companies and see what is it that they want from that person. And then I would spend the time to write down those 5 or 10 skills or attributes that that job wants, and make sure that within the executive summary and within your most recent roles, you show in your resume that you've demonstrated those things at work, or you have those skills. And this is not to basically game any system, but this is for you to be authentic in how you want to project yourself, how you want to present who you are. And as you create that artifact thoughtfully, it may take you 1, 2, 3, 5 days. But when I work with my mentees to put that together, it is so solid, it is so bulletproof, that you don't need to keep changing this for every company. You feel like this is you, this is representing you, and it is also then meeting the needs of the company who's hiring. And finally, if that is the case, your resume will get through the applicant tracking system. Because the biggest problem we all have is, we feel like our resume is not speaking exactly to the job. It should, but not exactly word by word. And so when I coach my folks, I work with them to make sure we step back and do the work in understanding what the hiring manager is looking for. We address that within the first half or one page of the resume, and then we step back because do not want to over engineer the resume. We know, we are confident about the artifact. We are confident that our best work is being represented by that artifact, and we can put it out there. Great question there, Kavita. Continue to ask any other follow-up questions. um, Dilip has a question: how do you move from one type of career to the other? So this is an interesting time in the economy where there are lots of people who are trying to compete for jobs. So if you are, as an example, a data engineer and you want to become a data scientist, this might not be the best time, to be very candid, because if you are a data engineer and if you're applying for a data scientist, that data scientist job already perhaps has hundreds of applicants who are already a data scientist. So if your resume goes there, who's a data engineer, it may not be a perfect match, and there is no reason for them to pick another person who's never been a data scientist. So if you are in your lane, if you're doing a certain type of a career, I would suggest you stick with that lane for now, given whatever is happening in the economy. 2 years ago, during the pandemic, or 3 years ago, there was this opportunity for people to to make their choice to rotate into different roles within the company, or to navigate to a whole different career outside the company. Right now the times have changed. There is a lot of competition, there is too many resumes, there are fewer open jobs. And so what you want to do in this environment is stick with your trade now, and a couple years later, when everybody will forget what this recession was, when the markets are back up in a couple years, that'll be the best time for you to basically look at what is a different career you'd like, and then from there go into that direction. It doesn't mean you stop learning. Between now and the next 1 to 2 years, you should totally invest in your craft, you should invest in your skills, grow those skills between now and the next 2 years. But the time to make that shift is going to be in about 2 years. These are the observations that I've made specifically about the ongoing market. If I've spoken to, when I speak with the managers and directors in engineering, they're actually being expected to code. So this was not the norm until about 2 years ago. If you showed up, if you were a senior manager or a director, you showed up for the interview, you were not being asked to code. What you got is high level design questions, low level design questions, but that's it. You sometimes were asked to write pseudocode to see if you can basically um, understand logic before you write code. So pseudocode is what they had to write, and that was all good. But what I am seeing now in the market is you're being asked to write code in Java, you're being asked to write Python, and everybody is being expected to be super technical, super hands-on as far as engineering leaders, engineering managers go. With product managers, one of my mentees, as they were interviewing, they were expected to write a SQL query and analyze the data in the interview. And it was set as an expectation with my mentee, with my client, that hey, we've laid off our data teams and we will need you to basically run the analysis for us and work with the general manager on this area, which means you're not just going to be a product manager, you're going to be a data driven product manager. So the expectation was for them to write these SQL queries. And with marketing managers, I have now started to see that they are being expected to design logos, create brochures. They are not being asked whether they can use some technology, because yes, there are lots of technologies. You could go to Canva, you could go to some other place and make these ready. But they're not being asked to, they're not being told how they should do it. They're just being asked, hey, just go design this brochure for us. And that's where they go in and start working. So those are the observations I'm making currently in the environment, and you may be seeing the same things. Thank you, Kavita. Appreciate your comment there. Any other questions, folks? Feel free to put in your comment. I'm just going to grab some water. Feel free to put in your comments and any other questions you have regarding this slide or the next one. So my suggestion, my observation here for you is that a lot more is expected from you at the workplace. So if you currently have a job, I definitely advise you to feel grateful. I want you to understand that what you have is definitely a gift So appreciate the job you have and give it your 200% right now, because the folks who are trying to keep you employed, as an example, Apple hasn't had any layoffs, Nvidia is not doing any layoffs. So when I work with my mentees in those companies, I work with them to make sure they're delivering 200% value to their company, because you appreciate what you have in this environment. If you have a job, if you're being paid, and some of you are even getting bonuses and RSUs as we speak, you want to give it your 200%, because your company is doing everything to fight the inflation, fight this economic crisis, fight the costs which are going up on them. So at this point, if you give them more value, that is when you stand out. And obviously, you continue to grow with the company, because if they are keeping you around now, chances are they'll keep you with them for a long, long time. So figure out how you can deliver value. When I step back and look into what some of my mentees at Microsoft or Nvidia or Apple are doing, I'm always there to coach them in situations where they can level up their performance, work better with their stakeholders, really build their executive presence, and drive value, which are quantified through metrics, through OKRs. And that's what I would ask you to do, to step back and take a deep look as to how can you add more value to your workplace. And the second observation is, or takeaway is that if you're looking for a job right now, it is tough, but you basically have to take this as another phase of education. So I was having this conversation with my clients during a group session yesterday, and I said to them, maybe this is an advanced education period for you, where you learn new skills, learn new tools, and take this time to upgrade your personal operating system. And I'll dive a little bit into that POS that I'm talking about. But this is truly a time where if you always worked on AWS and never on Azure, maybe you want to go there and create an account on Azure. If you really are curious about how to leverage some of those APIs with OpenAI, now is the time to do it. If you were always wondering how can I be better with writing more Tableau reports, now is the time to get your hands dirty into Tableau. So whatever it is that you're trying to upgrade your skills into, now is the time to do it. If you wanted to work on your executive presence, if you wanted to work on improving your communications, if you wanted to be better at being a good keynote speaker, now is a time for you to level up, because you will not get this kind of a time again, and hopefully not where you're between jobs. But now that you have that opportunity, take this time to step back, take this time to invest in yourself. And nobody's going to pay you to invest. You have to give yourself that chance. You have to give yourself that pat on that back every day to keep going. And you have to be very creative. The same or perhaps more creativity that you've shown in your jobs or in your interviews, you need to show those towards your own career development. Because when you are creative, when you are fired up to make the most out of this phase, that's when you will truly transform yourself. And obviously, the people who are interviewing you will see those changes in you. So bear in mind, it all starts with step one, which is first have a plan, and step two, every day relentlessly execute that plan for your own development. As long as you do that, and pretty much what we did as we were students, as long as you remain a student and you rapidly evolve your knowledge during this phase, you will come out strong on the other end. Meghna, good question there. Do I help with interview preparation for digital product manager role? You're currently working as a lead PM. Absolutely, yes, Meghna. Great question. In fact, my website, impeccableinterview.com, talks all about that. So feel free to grab some time with me, and I'll be more than happy to chat with you about this. If you are in your job right now, focus on self-learning, because as I mentioned, the opportunities to basically train you, or the budget to train you, that has been shrunk. And if you are basically investing in yourself, you can invest by hiring a coach. If your employer is not funding, in many cases, your employers like eBay, employers like Apple, Facebook, many of them fund your coaching programs. But if not, you could basically invest by hiring a coach by your own self, and challenge yourself to learn new skills all the time. Because as you do that, as you essentially understand how you would want to go from A to B, make those skills very specific. So as an example, one of my mentees wrote down a goal that I'm going to be a better engineer I looked at it, I smiled, and I said, "This is great. How do you know when you arrived? How do you know when you get there?" And she had no idea. And then I helped her break it down to say, let's get into which technology do we want to be focusing on to be a good engineer. Before that technology, do we want to do any pseudocode for logic and then go towards a technology, or both in parallel? And then I asked her rank on hacker rank, at which point she didn't know. So then we went from being nobody on hacker rank to having a goal on getting to a certain point in hacker rank. And that's a very measurable way to make progress towards your goal. And when you step back and think, how would you go from being at a rank 500, 600, 700? How would you continue to increase it by 50 or 100 points per month in a measurable way? And how do you look at some of those engineers who are probably at a higher rank at 1,000 or 2,000? Are those engineers any better? Are they working somewhere in Uber or any other large companies such as Microsoft or Expedia? Where are those folks working? What kind of accomplishments they've had? And how do you now compete with them? Those are the kinds of goals we create, and we make sure those are measurable, they are achievable, and that you are making daily progress towards them, because whatever you put your mind on, whatever you put your focus on, that starts to grow. So if you write a goal and leave it alone, it's not going to go anywhere. Perhaps it'll just be a piece of paper. But if you put that piece of paper with you, keep it with you every day, you look at it, you make tangible progress. Even if you do that 45 minutes every day, no more, you're going to be a much better engineer, a much better product manager, a much better CEO by focusing on your own development. It's that exact same conversation I have with CEOs when I coach them, and when they say, "I want my business to go 3x," I'm like, how much time do you want it to be 3x? Did you want the revenue to be 3x, or did you want, what do you want to be 3x? Or is it the profit that you want it to be 3x? Because those two are two different situations. To grow your top line or revenue is different from growing your profits, which is very different. And then get into how exactly, because everybody wants growth. What are the 2 or 3 strategic levers that we will pull for that growth to happen? So that's the point that comes in with coaching, where you have somebody with you who's been there, done that, and who's seen that journey for himself and for thousands of people he or she may have coached. That's what makes that conversation very, very rich, and something that leads to outcomes faster. Because I've seen individuals struggle by themselves, taking 2, 3 years to get somewhere, and then you have a coach and you could get there in 6 months. So that's what it comes down to when we say invest in yourself. If you believe in yourself, you'll invest in yourself. And when you invest in yourself, results happen. So it's not just about investing in cars or stock or real estate. Every once in a while, we need to invest in ourselves as well to upgrade our personal operating system. In your job search, my advice is find time or invest daily time to learn new skills, and basically put that on your calendar like everything else. And if for any reason you can't do it at that time, find another time, but during the day, so that there is daily focus on learning. And if at this point, many of you folks may have realized, I have a slide coming up on this shortly, there is opportunity outside of the tech industry. So folks who are getting laid off from Google, Meta, when I work with them, we are finding opportunities in healthcare. We are finding opportunities in manufacturing. Some of us are going into robotics now. So there are lots of opportunities opening up, newer opportunities outside of tech. So I urge you guys to look outside of tech as well. And your net worth is your network is your net worth. Meaning, if you can sit down, if you can find the time and spend the time with the folks that you know and explain to them what you're going through, there is a chance that 3 or 4 out of those 10 people that you sit down with personally, they will do everything that is in their power to help you, because they understand you're struggling. They're your friends or past colleagues or relatives, and they want to help you. And having an employee refer you inside a company is one of the best ways for you to start your experience or your journey with a company. Because when an employee refers you, most companies have a process where the recruitment or the recruiters have to get back to you. So that basically forces them to look at your resume and genuinely tell you if there is a match or if there is no match. And if there's a match, there is a high chance you're going to be put through the process. So going through your network is very critical in today's day and age. And I always tell my mentees, if you're doing job applications, one powerful conversation with the right person in the company is much better than 10 random job applications on the internet. So use that time to network well, to keep your network warm. And also, it's never a one-way thing. If they help you, you got to figure out sooner or later how you will help them, because networking is not about taking value, it's about giving value first. So make sure when that time comes, you always help them out or pass it on, basically pay it forward, because when you go inside the company, now you have that power to refer other people who may be in a similar situation. This is one of my favorite quotes. If you are irritated by every rub, how will you be polished? So the point I'm trying to make is this is a tough phase. Yes, we all acknowledge, but trust me, if you stay focused, if you invest in yourself and you have the right mindset, aka personal operating system, this is going to be a phase which will help you transform forever. And you will be bulletproof in that. We all know every 8 or 10 years, this is what happens with the world economy. It's cyclical, which means that if you build a bulletproof formula for this phase, you're going to thrive ahead and you're going to survive any other downturns that may be coming ahead of us. And this is a stat, some data for you guys, for all the data geeks on this call. Essentially, what we are trying to show here is that if you look at cities like San Francisco, Seattle, aka tech cities, 66%, over a third of the population, about a third of the population was employed by tech. And what you find here is really amazing, because when you look at FIRE, which is finance and real estate, finance, insurance, real estate is FIRE. When you look at FIRE, it had such a small share. That was a number two industry in the San Francisco Bay Area. Of course, it's Silicon Valley, but let's go to Madison. Even Madison had 56% people in tech, if you can believe that. And the second one was FIRE, was 11%. So many of these cities, or all of these cities in this list, the big cities, which saw a lot of growth in the last few years, they were employing a lot of people in the tech industry, the tech talent, as they called it, from the tech industry. And the other industries, which were number two industries, also employed this talent, which I've showed you on the right. And those are the second largest industries employing the tech talent. So if you look at this chart, now what is starting to happen is that in 2023, you're seeing that talent leave that tech world and go into the non-tech world. So as an example, you will see the transition happen of people going from, let's say, technology to professional services. So you might hear somebody going from like a Google to joining a healthcare company, or from a Google to Geico, which is an insurance company. They might go there and become the director of engineering at Geico. Or you might have somebody joining McKinsey and through that starting to offer professional services to their clients. You will see a lot of that happen because more and more jobs are being opened up by banks, by healthcare, because they see this opportunity as an opportunity to grab talent, good talent, which they could not do 2 years ago. They had to agree to hiring people remote. They had to agree to paying people 20-30% more premium. And heaven forbid, if there was a single offer from Google, people will drop all other offers and walk straight to Google because that was the highest paymaster. Right now, those other companies and industries are happy because one, Google is not competing anymore. It's not even hiring. Second, there are people from Google that have worked at Google 10, 20 years who are now looking for jobs, and those healthcare companies, those industrial companies, the manufacturing companies, construction companies who want to expand using technology as a strategy can now hire these people who are ex-Microsoft, ex-Google, ex-Meta, ex-Amazon. And that for them is like employees are on fire sale. So why would you not go hire these people? That's what they're looking at. And that's something that people miss. So if tech companies are laying off, I promise you the companies outside of tech are hiring. So if you look at the overall numbers, 220,000 people have been laid off since 2022. And at the moment, there are 55,000 jobs open for tech people outside of the tech industry. So yes, we don't have the same number of jobs open, but truth to be told, there are companies still hiring. There is more competition, but every moment resumes are being accepted, every moment interviews are happening, and every moment job offers are being rolled out. Deepti has a question. When you hire a coach, what should you look for in a coach, especially when you're coming from a non-engineering background? Great question, Deepti. So A coach generally is somebody who would step back and look at your career as a whole, and at that point they don't have to be necessarily from your industry. Sometimes I've had coaches from from a very different industry or from a very different area, because they may bring skills which are complementary to you. And so when you pick a coach, look for what is it that you want to achieve, and if they've been there, done that, that's one good indicator for you. And the second thing is that if that coach has had a track record of coaching people like you, similar to you, seeing their success story will give you an idea if they are the right fit for you. And third is always the chemistry, because coaching is all about truly trusting somebody in that process of rapid growth and transformation. So if you can feel that chemistry with that person, whether you're meeting in person or through Zoom or through a phone call, if you can unlock that chemistry for a much bigger conversation to happen, that's a good sign. So, Deepti, those are the things I would look for when I'm looking for a coach. And I have personally used that formula to work with multiple coaches. Fact, tech workers are getting hired every single day. So no matter what the news says, this is a reality. The news is not going to come out and say 95 people in the last 3 hours that have accepted a job offer. It's not going to come out and say that, because they're programmed and paid to present to you what is going to be most engaging. Obviously, Amazon laying off 12,000 people is going to be a headline that will capture many people's attention, versus 1,200 of the ex-Amazon people found a job in the last month. That's not a headline they create. Somehow it's not even going to get that kind of attraction. So the news media works in a very different way. So if you're not the kind who can handle a lot of negative press, stay away from it. Instead, use that time to read a book that you want to read, or go read a blog that you aspire to read, but stay away from negative press as much as you can. Overall, I would say, in your mindset, from a mindset perspective, easier said than done, guys. And I know I've been there, done that. So cut out the negative press as much as you can. Connect with the people who recently got hired, not fired, if you can. Of course, if it's your close friend or if it's your neighbor who needs you to support them, by all means speak with them if they've been fired. But quite honestly, you guys need to speak to who is recently gotten hired. How did they get hired? What was their journey like? What do they do? And unlock those things, because those are going to help you crystallize, visualize what is it that it will take for you to get there. And if you can do that in a very methodical way, success happens, and it'll be your own personal formula of achieving success the way you want and how you want it. I'm going to share a tool shortly, and I would love for you guys to try it. I promise it'll boost your daily and weekly progress towards finding a new job. So stay tuned. This is the other favorite quote I have. Obstacles are those frightful things you see when you take your eyes off of the goal. And this connects really well to the part which I told you. You can read the news and you can feel bad about the 10,000 people that just got laid off and not do anything for the rest of the day. Or you can keep reading the book or the blog, or keep working on your coding skills and get better, and just know that you're getting closer and closer to your goals. Or even step out and network with people in the companies that you are having on your wish list. If you did those things, that's definitely where you're focusing on your goal. And the moment you're not networking, the moment you're not upgrading your skills, the moment you're not trusting your coach and only listening to the negative press, that's where you're losing your eyes off of your goals and things don't go in the direction you plan. So take that time to be honest with yourself and cut off the negative press as much as you can. This is the link for me. If you guys wanted to set up time with me, feel free. I would love to get to know you. You have any questions after this webinar or anything which is going on in your lives where I could be of help, feel free to set up the time with me through this link. And you can also find this link on my website. If you went to impeccableinterview.com and set up time with me, you will get an email with this link. So whatever is easy, I look forward to hearing from you on what you thought about this webinar and any questions that you may have after this webinar. This is the free tool that I was talking about. This is called the JARS tool, where you can track your jobs. How many jobs did you find? How many applications did you make, or how many jobs you applied to? How many responses you got? And finally, how many interviews you have scheduled. So I have put together a formula in a very metric fashion to turn indicators red, green, or blue, like in a business. So when I run a business, Every week, I like to sit down and go, which of my metrics are green, red, yellow, because I like it to be measurable. I am a person who's visual. I like it to be measurable. So what I've done is I've created this chart for you where every week you will get to see, actually every end of day you'll get to see if you did what you needed to do for the sheet to turn green. And if you did it, you know you're on the right track. And if you don't, you catch up on the next day. So that's the tool, and I would love for you to download the sheet. This is a link for the sheet, basically impeccableInterview.com/jars. If you went to this sheet, you will be able to download this Excel sheet, and I have explained everything in the second tab as to how to go about using this sheet. And once you use this sheet, you will understand that job seekers have self-doubt. Some of the mentees who started working with me, they explained to me that they were applying for jobs without knowing what will happen, and they were at their computer doing something for 13, 14, 15, 16 hours a day. And this is after going through a layoff, which means psychologically they were hurt. So rather than addressing their own emotions and feelings, they took to the computer and they kept applying every second, every minute of the day without knowing what's going to come of it. And that got them very stressed. All the more they felt all the more rejected because they did not get responses. And so that was when this sheet was born. I put this together for all you folks who are feeling that you're not doing enough despite doing so much, who are feeling that I'm not good enough. I've put this sheet together so that this is an objective indicator that if you did this much work every day, you did what you needed to do for that day, and now it's time to go do other things. Because if you just keep applying for jobs, you're not getting better with your skill sets, you're not working on your interview skills, you're not networking, you're not doing that other things which are important, which you need to do throughout the day. And as you do that, including living a healthy life, you will then realize that this sheet helps you to stay on track by putting in those few hours every single day, and then it gives you a green light to go do other things in your day. So I've put this together. It's free for you to go download there. And again, if you have any questions after you use the sheet, feel free to email me any questions, any suggestions. I'm always here, open to comments. Dipti has another question. When you're laid off and if you're offered a position down to your previous post, I'm assuming you're saying below the level, should we accept it? If yes, how will it be perceived by other employers when you want to change? Dipti, it's a great question, and it's a very hard situation to be in. And I will tell you that for every person, they are in their journey. So as an example, you always look at your career from your 5 or 10 year horizon perspective. As an example, if you want to be at some place in 10 years, sometimes, not sometimes, more often than not, it's not basically just a straight path, right? It's not like a straight line. You sometimes have to go through changes, ups and downs within the company, outside the company. So what you have to figure out is this next job at least going to be a forward step in that 10-year goal? So as an example, if you were director and now if you're being a senior manager, you would step back and look that in the 5 or 10 year goal, would it truly matter that I was again a senior manager the second time? Or do I believe in myself that I will get promoted in the company in 1 to 2 years and back to being a director, and from there back to being a senior director in 3 to 5 years? And if that's the case, you're going to be fine. So you want to basically look at your long-term career plan. You want to look at what kind of positions you're targeting for the future, and is this step going to help you? The other clear message I'll give you is that sometimes it's also not just about the level or title, it's also about what you're going to learn in that role. So as an example, if that new job as a senior manager is going to make you better at managing projects and managing large teams, or it's going to be making you better with managing remote teams, or it's going to be making you better with a certain framework that you were trying to have your hands on, then take it, because it'll also give you an opportunity to learn some more skills and prove yourself better in that role. And if you did that, if you did a really good job there, chances are they're going to promote you to being a director once again. So I would say if you're having an opportunity with one level down, consider it seriously. um, Lavesh has a question. What is the core reason behind the layoffs? That's a great question. So what happens is sometimes companies make mistakes of hiring more people than they need, During the pandemic, that's what happened. All the large tech companies kept looking at each other and grabbing talent from each other and overpaying people and hiring more people. So when you hire more people and when you overpaid them, you assume that from here the business will continue to grow, and from here we will continue to have more and more need for more and more employees, and the scope is going to be the same. Unfortunately, 2022 was a rude awakening because when interest rates started to rise, the cost to borrow money became high. So lots of businesses cut down the expense. So if the tech companies had their customers whom they were selling to, if they cut their costs, that means the tech companies are going to make less revenue. And similarly, every other company forecasted their revenue to go down, whether it was interest rates going up, going up, whether it was the economy, whether it was the consumers deciding to spend less, or all of the above. The companies all forecasted that the revenue is going to take a dip. And when the revenue takes a dip, you got to find ways to cut costs. And it's unfortunate that most companies who had hired more people than they needed in 2020 started to fire those exact same people or lay those people off. Exactly, sometimes those people which were hired right in the middle of COVID. And when that started, they all started to look at each other. When Google did it, Amazon felt like we should catch up because the shareholders apparently felt happy about the companies laying employees off and cutting costs. And that sort of became a thing to do. When you saw the Google layoff, Microsoft happened. Microsoft layoff, Meta is next. Meta layoff, LinkedIn is next. No. So everybody wants to prove to the market, to prove to the shareholders that we are effective in cutting costs. And if that happens, then everybody's going to still lay people off without thinking too much about the employees, too much about their own businesses and how they'll be impacted. So I really respect Apple and Nvidia because they did thoughtful hiring in 2020, and now they're not having to lay people off. Their revenue forecasts, no matter what they say, they're still keeping the employee base with them together. Yes, there have been some layoffs. I've heard those, but the numbers that I see with Google or Meta, those kinds of numbers are unheard of. You don't see those big numbers anywhere else. And now there's one other huge sort of a thing that'll happen is when they start hiring, when one of them starts to hire big time, let's say Meta says, my business is now growing, and Meta actually declared profits, Microsoft declared profits. They're all profitable in Q1 2023. All the companies have declared amazing results. So now when some of them start hiring, the others will also start to copy, which is unfortunate. They may not think about their need. Sometimes they just want to do what the market is doing and copy others. So you may still see a change happen in the job market, but when it does, it'll happen all of a sudden where all these companies will start to hire employees very quickly. So I hope that shift in tide happens soon. Cool. Thank you so much all for joining. Are there any other questions? Please feel free to put your questions in chat. Dipti, hopefully what I shared is helpful and puts things in perspective for you. And same for Kavita, Meghna, and then Lavesh, Dilip. Any other questions? Please feel free to type here. Do you guys have any other questions? Awesome. Please feel free to like or put a simple like there on LinkedIn or Facebook, wherever you are joining us from. I would appreciate your support. Put any questions, any takeaways from this webinar on the LinkedIn Live if you can, and put your comments in there. I'll be sure to take a look at them and answer. So any questions that come to you now or in the weekend as you reflect on this, feel free to put those on the LinkedIn comments. And you have my Calendly link. Feel free to set up a time with me. I'm always curious to hear what you think and any reflections that you had after this call. Thank you so much for joining me here today. It was truly a pleasure speaking with you all. Have a good one.